G'day everyone, BH Day here. We're going to do the in-depth review of this Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. It's an 8th generation and it's a 14-inch super lightweight laptop. Now I don't think there's many laptops out there at its weight class that can actually beat its amount of ports it has. So for me, this still holds a very special place in my heart. I really do love this laptop. Now this is the 8th generation, so there's a little bit of a few improvements and we'll slowly get through to it. Now we'll be looking at the internals of this computer later on in the video, so be sure to stick around for that. I'll also be looking at its temperatures and fan noise as well. So I will be putting timestamps along this video so you can actually skip to the sections that you would like to see, and hopefully that'll make it easier for you. But first off, I'll just quickly go through its configuration. So I'll just put them up here for you. The only thing you need to be noteful of is its RAM. They are soldered to the main board, so you need to select the right one straight up when you actually order this computer. You can't really upgrade it later on. Let's have a look at the ports. Starting on the left-hand side of the computer, we've got two Thunderbolt ports. The very left USB-C port is where you plug in the power adapter, so that's for power delivery. And then after that, we've got the Lenovo Docking Connect port, and that's where you plug in the Lenovo docking stations. And then after that, we've got a USB 3.2 Gen 1 port, that's Type A port, and then a HDMI port, now that is version 1.4B, and then after that is the headphone jack. Looking at the right hand side of the computer, we've got the security lock slot, and then we've got the exhaust vents, and then a USB 3.2 Gen 1 port, that's Type A, and also does power share, so you can charge your devices through this port, and then a power button. When I tested out the temperatures and fan noise of this computer, I found most of the heat is located near the center of the keyboard, which is unsurprising because that's where the processor lays. Now, the other area that gets heated up a bit is the right-hand side of the computer, and again, unsurprising because that's where the exhaust vents are located. Now, first off, when I took my measurements, my ambient temperature was at 23 degrees Celsius. And of course, I took the base measurement when the computer was on idle, and the center of the keyboard at its maximum was 31 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it was 31 decibels. Then I put the computer on 20% load, so that's what you'll be doing for average use, office productivity, surfing the web, streaming videos. And the maximum temperature of the keyboard was 35 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it was 32 decibels. Then I put the computer on 50% load, and the maximum temperature of the keyboard was 44 degrees Celsius, and the fan noise peaked at 33 decibels. So still very quiet. Then I put the computer at 100% load, and the maximum temperature for the keyboard was 47 degrees Celsius, and the fan noise was still at 33 decibels. So it hasn't actually changed since the 50% load. Now, each individual keys was not that crazy hot to actually touch, even though it is reading at 47 degrees Celsius. I also took a measurement of the bottom of the computer, and the maximum temperature was 48.5 degrees Celsius, and of course the fan noise was still at 33 decibels. So you can see this computer is much cooler than the 7th generation, and it's not as loud as the 7th generation as well. So they've actually made improvements on the thermals there. So I've got it, and also with the added to the battery life, this is doing extremely well. And with this 10th generation processor in there, it's definitely making a big impact on this computer here. So definitely, I love what they've done to this computer here. And even when you connect it to a dock, it's not as noisy as before. So definitely, they've made some improvements on that as well. Let's test out the computer for thermal throttling. This computer is configured with an i7-10610U processor with a base clock speed of 1.8 gigahertz. So the computer's been running on 100% load for just under 3 hours, and we can see that the speed of the processor is anywhere between 2.3 to about 2.8 gigahertz. So it's actually doing pretty well, which means it doesn't have thermal throttling for the clock speed. But as for turbo boost throttling, there is a little bit, but not too bad at all. Let's test out the computer to see how long it's able to sustain high turbo boost for. So I've got a stopwatch here. I'm going to put the computer on 100% load. So we're just going to start that off now. And I'll start the clock off, and we'll start to see this number here, which is how fast it's going at the moment. It's going about 4.29 gigahertz, and when that probably drops down below 4, I will then stop the clock. It's able to, it's about 4.2, 4.17, and 4, and just drop there. So looking around about 19 or so seconds for it to sustain a high turbo boost for. So that's doing pretty good there. As for the speakers, there are 4 speakers, 2 located above the keyboard, and there are 2 located underneath the laptop at the front. When I tested out the maximum volume of this speakers, it managed to measure at a peak of 86.9 decibels. So that's pretty loud, and you definitely won't be struggling when you're doing outdoor work, doing presentation. And I've got to say, as for the speaker quality of the sound, you will be blown away by it. I was always and have been since the 7th generation. There hasn't really been improvements from the 7th generation to 8th generation. I found them very similar, and I've got to say they're still one of the best speakers on any laptop I've ever tested. And that's including some of the Macs. The MacBook Pros, they're very close. They're about the same. I would say they will be on par, but I definitely love the speakers on the X1 Carbons for sure. They have very good bass, very balanced all the way through for all the ranges. They can get very loud, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of bass, I'm gonna say. And the acoustics are beautiful on the 8th generation as well. I definitely love the speakers on the Carbon. Every time I boot the speakers up for this to show some of my clients, you will love it. They all are blown by the speakers there. So definitely one of the highlights, besides all of its weight and its ability, the speakers are fantastic on this computer here. And that's very unusual for a business laptop for sure. So definitely speakers are a good win for this computer. Let's turn our attention to the keyboard. Of course, it houses the world famous ThinkPad keyboard. I love this keyboard with a bit of a passion here. Now it's got a very nice tactile feel to it. A lot of key travel as well, and each individual keys is quite a bit of a smooth finish to it, so it's really nice. And also the spacing between each key is quite, I would call it medium. It's actually quite nice, so you can still type. And this is, you'll find a lot of programmers love typing on this as well. This is really a nice keyboard here. And of course, it's very durable, and you can see it's got a fair bit of, definitely a lot of ruggedness to it, built to it. I've got to mention, of course, the new special keys on the top here for video conferencing. We're F9 to F12, and we also have the function key is on the very left there. So you actually have to just get used to it if you're very new to the ThinkPad series. This has been a very old thing they've had for many years. And of course, the actual power button is located on the right, which is, for me, I like that, because when you're connected to a dock, you don't have to actually lift the lid up to turn the computer on. You can actually power it on from the side if your dock does not have a power button that can mirror the computer. So I like the fact that the power button is on the side. And of course, for the track point, there's actually sitting right there, so that's still there. And for those who actually know me, I would call it the keyboard nipple or the G spot there. And of course, you've got the 3 buttons below the space bar that can support it. Now, so we'll just quickly go back to the keyboard. It does have backlight. It's a matter of clicking function and spacebar, and you'll activate the backlight. And of course, there's 3 settings: there's off, low, and high. And of course, now with the trackpad, it's got a very matte feel to it, and it's got a really decent size for the trackpad. I do definitely like, and of course it's mechanical there, and of course it is hinged at the top here, and of course most of the time you'll be pressing down the bottom there, and of course it's touch sensitive, and it's got multi gestures as well too. But definitely I love the feel of this trackpad as well because of the type of feel. Now going to the actual palm rest, it's got a very similar feel to the trackpad. It's got a bit of a matte feel to it as well. And on the right side of the trackpad is the optional fingerprint scanner. As for the build construction of this X1 Carbon 8th generation, it is a carbon fiber magnesium chassis. And you can see there's not much twist involved in this thing. This thing is designed to really go for it. So you can actually, drop, well, I wouldn't say drop it, but it can take a fair bit of beating and some drops as well. It does pass 12 military tests for its ruggedness, toughness and durability. So this thing is designed to be taken out in the field. And like I said, this is also an enterprise. A lot of businesses have these because these are fantastic in that. So definitely, I love the build quality of this computer here. Now on the back here, it's pretty much just what you would call plastic. It's got a bit of matte feel. The whole entire thing feels like matte as well. And I do notice that with the 8th generation, it doesn't grab as much fingerprints as compared to the 7th generation. That's a nice little improvement there. The 7th generation was really just taking a lot of fingerprints. 8th generation, not so much. So I've got to say that's a nice improvement there. And again, the sides here, it's all, again, the same feel to it as well, with the bit of a matte feel to it. And as for the palm rest, again, matte feel to that as well. And you've got plenty of space on the palm rest for you to type away and not have much problems there as well. So definitely say I love the build quality of the X1 Carbon, and you always really feel once you pick one of these up, you go, this thing is so light. It always amazes me every time I pick the X1 Carbon up. Just the lightness of it. It's just amazing how light this thing is as well. I want to make a special mention about the hinge. Now, in my previous video of my unboxing of this laptop here, if you haven't checked that out, I'll put a link in the description below. But I did mention that I thought that the hinge was upgraded to a metal one. And I had a quick squeeze at the 7th generation, and that's also got a metal one as well. So that was actually upgraded in the 7th generation, not in the 8th generation. And that was more to do with its ability for the hinge for you to actually do the one finger test. So it's easy to open it up, and after that it does take a little bit more friction to open it up itself. And it does come with a 720p webcam. Now there's a privacy shutter on this computer here, and it's just made a little flick of the switch and you'll see it go red because there's something that actually covers it so you don't have prying eyes. I do wish they actually upgraded to the 1080p webcam. We are in 2020 these days, and I'm really hoping Lenovo does listen to us. They will give us a 720p no longer anymore, because we really need to upgrade it to 1080p these days. We are doing a lot more content creation, and we're also doing a lot more video conferencing due to COVID. This is a recording from the built-in webcam from the X1 Carbon 8th generation. This is the video and audio unedited, so you can see what it looks like. Now I've got two types of lights turned on at the moment. I've got my studio light on, and I've also got my room lights, which are down lights, that is turned on as well. So I'm actually going to turn off my studio light so you can see what it looks like with just the ambient light that would normally see for video conferencing. So I'm just going to turn that off, and you'll see that hopefully adjust to see what it looks like. And I'd definitely love to hear your thoughts on the video and audio quality of this 720p webcam. Now I'm just going to turn my main light back on for my studio. Of course, always have better lights, and you should get a better quality picture as well. Definitely love to hear your thoughts. As for the display wise, it hasn't changed since the 7th generation. Still a 16:9 ratio, and the bezel is pretty much the same as the 7th generation. So on the side, it is doing pretty good there for the side. Now the top, it's got a little bit, but they're definitely a forgivable amount of bezel on top. And of course the bottom, it's got a little bit of bezel on the bottom. As for the display panel, each one has been upgraded to about 100 nits of brightness. So that's definitely a nice win for all of us from Lenovo, that all their screens are now brighter than before. So definitely I like that. Now this one I've got here is a full HD touch version of this display, and I definitely like this display here. I've definitely find they've actually definitely has improved on brightness, so you can sit in a cafe a lot better at reading from this, or even doing presentation when you're out and about. So definitely this display is fantastic as well, and you can definitely dim it down so you can have better battery life there. Since we're talking about the battery life, I might as well talk about the power and battery. So it comes with a 65-watt power adapter, which runs through a USB-C port. It comes with a 52 watt-hour battery, and this is probably one of the improvements it has since the 7th generation. So I ran my tests in 4 different modes of this computer here. So the first off is the best performance mode, and I pretty much put the computer at 100% load and the brightness at 100%, and it managed to get 1 hour and 10 minutes. So this is a constant load here. Now when I put the computer on better performance mode, it managed to get 1 hour and 30 minutes. So a little bit of improvements there. Then I put the computer on better battery mode. Now I did drop the processing to about 50% load, as well as the screen brightness to 50%, and it managed to get 5 hours and 30 minutes. So it has improved, I'll definitely tell you that. And in battery saving mode, I managed to get 8 hours and 10 minutes. Now these are very constant workloads, so I'm just keeping consistent there so you can actually compare to my other testers from other laptops there. But if you're doing average use, for example, just streaming the web, which I was doing, and having the speakers up at about 50% and the script writes at 50% as well, and I was just doing office work, productivity work as well, and watching YouTube, I managed to get 10 hours and 30 minutes. So the previous generation, the 7th generation, I was getting an average around about 6.5 to 7 hours. Now this is 10.5 hours. That's a massive improvement from the previous generation. Now they do quote 19.5 hours. I've never got that magical numbers, and I'm wondering how Lenovo ever get those numbers, but just to tell you, I was getting about 10.5 hours for average use. So I am very impressed on the new improvements on the 8th generation here. Let's have a look at the internals of the X1 Carbon. So first off, we need to actually remove 5 screws. There's only 5 screws on the back, which is really easy to do, and I've pre-done them. I was just going to give you a quick warning about the screws is you can't actually remove them completely off. They just, as you actually unscrew it, this whole entire back cover will lift itself up, which is really good because then you don't need to pry it open because it automatically comes off. So I've already pre-done it, so you can actually just see that. I'll just put that to the side. Now, there's not really, again, not much to do an upgrade-wise. We've got the SSD hard drive here, which is the M.2. And then there's another slot for M.2 as well, which you can put down here. And that's pretty much it. Again, the RAM is soldered to the main board. We've got the Wi-Fi card sitting up here. And I'm just going to tell you, the battery is held in by 6 screws. I've pre-undone them. And if you need to disconnect it, it's just through this pin here. I'm just going to leave that connected up. And pretty much I'll just lift it up so you can see what's underneath the battery. And of course we've got the coin battery right here, which is actually connected here. So if you need to disconnect the coin battery, it's easiest to pull it out. You don't need to actually lift the battery up to remove that. So it's just that one down there. And that's pretty much all there is to the X1 Carbon. Again, not much upgrades you could do to this. I did perform the benchmarks for this particular computer here. Now this one is configured with an i7 1061U processor with 16 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte hard drive. Here are the scores for Passmark, Citybench R15 and R20, 3D Mark, PC Mark 10, Geekbench, Crystal Disk Mark, and Spec View Pref. With the 8th generation, it's pretty much an upgrade of its processor and the display panel. With the processor, we've now got way better performance and definitely better battery life, which was what was missing the 7th generation. That's definitely a big win for all of us. And the display panel being a little bit bright, which means we can work better outdoors. And this being a business laptop, that's a big win for all of us. And this already has fantastic speakers. I don't know how they're going to improve on speakers there, but one day we might. But this overall, generally being such a lightweight laptop to travel with, and with this durable and rugged sort of chassis, it is an amazing laptop here. And I can definitely recommend the Lenovo X1 Carbon 8th generation. If you've got a 7th generation looking to upgrade to 8th generation, if you've got the bit of money to splash, definitely they're worth going to the 8th generation for sure. Now, if you find this video informative or enjoyed it, smack that like button there for me, or just to support me, it would be fantastic. If you haven't done already, subscribe to my channel, but hit that subscribe button bottom right screen. I do try to upload a new video every week. And just remember, imperfections in life makes it beautiful and interesting. I'll see you next video.